Very good morning, everyone. Thank you, Simon Marcella, for having me. It's an absolute pleasure working and contributing to this initiative. Let me get straight to what we are here for. So I'll be talking and sharing and discussing the results of the current phase, which is the pilot testing of WASH AG indicators. And this activity or the phase is still underway. So the results and findings are something which are provisional in nature. With that, let me get started. I'll go to the next slide. So I would like to begin by trying to establish the relevance of the current phase so that we all appreciate the importance of the current phase. So for that, let me zoom out and take you through the WASH AG framework journey, which covers the steps that have already been taken and the phases of which have already been covered, followed by potential next steps. Starting with the first phase, where e-MFP and Aquaforol in collaboration with Rebel came up with a set of WASH indicators, which were separately meant for financial institutions and SMEs, and that became a starting point. This is, and the next phase is where MSC got engaged, and we tried to evaluate the application of the same framework by evaluating the current impact measurement practices across impact investors. For that, we consulted these impact investors and also collected feedback on the framework. Among the various outcomes, there were two primary, which became based on which we developed the next phase. One outcome was that the framework required refinement, and the second being that the framework needs to get tested in real world scenarios through pilot. And that is how we came to the next phase, where we are trying to do pilot testing of the WASH AG framework and trying to refine the framework before that. So the next potential step that we see is going to be the adoption of the framework across all stakeholders, largely impact investors and their investing institutions, so that we have a harmonized framework and reporting happening across the same framework. As part of the next step, what we see is impact evaluation happening through regular data collection. This slide, I would like to take you through some of the key activities that we undertook as part of the current phase. Starting with that, building on the insights of the previous study, we wanted to come up with a more refined version so that we can take that for pilot implementation. And for that, we not only relied on our previous studies, we also reviewed some of the global benchmarks and frameworks, and also consulted, data platforms like Header and Atlas to take into account their learnings. This was followed by designing the pilot, and a major aspect of this was the onboarding of the partners. And that is something that took us time, and we onboarded four financial service providers, two coming from Africa, CDN and Hofocam, and two coming from Southeast Asia, to account for various geographical diversification as well in results. This was followed by the implementation of pilot, where we are trying to handhold, give all kinds of handhold support to all these institutions in carrying out this pilot by building data collection templates, by building survey tools, which is going to enable them to collect data. And of course, the last step is going to be, dissemination of whatever learning and outcomes of what, that we are going to see as part of this pilot implementation, and a wider dissemination through webinars as well. So this slide onwards, I'm going to cover the outcomes and the findings from the current study. Building on the insights from the previous study, which was to refine the framework. So there are some alterations that we have done on the existing framework. While most of the indicators were retained in the original form, we did alteration, we have parked one indicator, which is indicator 1.4 for later adoption, owing to its complication in understanding and owing to some kind of redundancy, because this is an indicator which is applicable for SME borrowers of the financial institutions, and all SME borrowers are supposed to have some, contributing in some way or the other in the market linkages. So this is something that we have parked for later. If you see, the amber ones are the ones where we have altered or refined the definition further and made it more specific. For example, if you see indicator 1.5, which is the number of loans with supportive enabling environment, has now been now redefined as number of loans supported through blended finance, because this is something, an understanding that is commonly understood by all the financial service providers, as well as it is easy to understand, and we have made it more specific. Similarly, if on the next slide, there are other changes that we have done that I'll take you through. So on this slide, if you can see, there are there are two climate-related indicators, one related to adaptation and the other related to mitigation. If you try to have, get a deeper understanding of the kind of activities that are engaged in WASH, most of them qualify for adaptation purposes. So therefore, in order to keep it simple, we have tried to merge both these indicators so that both the mitigation and adaptation are recorded under the same indicator. Then the red ones are the ones which we have dropped for now, owing to their subjectivity, complication, and implementation from a financial service provider point of view. And to some extent, some of them were already getting covered as part of other indicators. Uh, you know, I if you see indicator number 4.2, which has been dropped, which is number of loans in wash portfolio with good quality of service provided, is again owing to its subjectivity and complication of standardizing this definition, we have dropped it. In addition to, a part of it is already getting covered in the JMP framework related indicator, where we are covering the quality of service already. So these are the alterations that we have tried to achieve in the framework. And if you see, if you see that as a result, we have dropped five indicators, altered three and the definitions. We have merged two and created one which was related to climate, and there is one which has been parked for later. So eventually we are left with 12 indicators as part of the framework. But there is a catch here or a caveat that 12 indicators are not just indicators, there are sub indicators to each indicators. For example, number of loans in the wash portfolio have eight sub indicators to it. So, it is just not 12 indicators, there are many attached to it as part of the sub indicators. So we have tried to club all of those together. Next up is on our plate was to come up with an operational manual, which is very quite intuitive and it's something that any financial service provider can take and try to understand the framework and try to understand its application and how to record it. And for that, we came up with an operational manual, a playbook, something like that. And we did it, we refined and redefined indicators in a way that if you see this indicator, which is the first indicator of the framework in its earlier form, is number of loans in the WASH portfolio that have been provided by the local financing institutions. We have tried to come up with an elaborated definition of the same, and we've also provided the list of qualifying projects or activities under this. This so that it's quite easier for them to create this list and WASH module. And this is also something that we have come up in collaboration and trying with Aqua for All. And then we identified sub-indicators to it. If number of loans across gender, across urban and rural, a number of loans given to women, and number of loans given to SMEs. So altogether, there are eight sub-indicators to the first indicator, and we've also given formula for implementation, followed by we have also given them methodology for data collection, whether it has to happen at the time of origination and how it has to be how it is supposed to happen, or whether it is supposed to happen through survey methodology. Beyond that, we have added features like its application, whether this particular indicator is applicable for SMEs or retail clients or both. We have also identified the source of collecting this data and supplemented everything with an example. So what we have figured out is that we'll have to rely on two types of sources for data. One being MIS or the core banking system, and then second being survey. Ideally it would be really nice and easy if we had all the data coming from MIS, but that's not the scenario because MIS is something that is already been happening to a large extent, and for some kinds of indicators like the impact on health, or we'll have to rely on something which is going to happen on post facto. So for MIS, what we have done to enable the collection of data, we have created Excel template with specific data points to calculate the various ratios. And for survey, we created a Kobo tool survey, digital survey platform. On that, we created a survey tool through which we are collecting post facto data points. Next up is uh, although we are not even halfway through the pilot implementation, I just wanted to cover what are the initial insights that are coming on from the pilot implementation. So this is a result that is coming from one full pilot implementation by one FSP partners, and there is partial data that has come from one of the participating agencies, while other two there's no data yet, and the data are still data points are still awaited. I'll take you through one example as to has been happening. So we have tried to rate each indicator based on ease of adoption, how easy it was to implement the methodology that we prescribed in our manual, and what is the quality of the data that has been collected. If you see indicator number 1.2, which is the average level of grant support to SMEs, so in one case. It was not applicable as there was no SME borrowers for them, but in the other case, we did not receive any data. We earlier thought that there is a practice for FSP partners to collect data frequently from SMEs, from their SME borrowers, but that is not a case. So we might have to resort to doing annual survey or quarterly survey to collect this data point. And similar, because therefore the ease of adoption is something that came as a red, and therefore naturally the quality of data is something that has not been collected. I can spend more time on this maybe as part of question and answer round, but I'll skip to the next slide for now. So here we are going to see some of the initial observation and challenges, starting with the first challenge, which is the systemic and the MIS related issue. In most of the cases, what we have seen is that FSP partners do not tag the loan just beyond wash loans for secondary classification, whether it's a climate related wash loan, or whether it's a non-climate related wash loan, or whether it's a sanitation wash loan, or whether it's a drinking water wash loan. This is important for us to enable us to understand more and get more insights at the time of origination itself. Now, the second challenge is something related to the first challenge, which is going to address the first challenge itself, which is, there is a lack of understanding as to what these indicators mean, which we are trying to address through this, operational manual. But to implement that, they will be required to do tweaks in their MIS to collect more data at a secondary level at the time of origination. And all these tweaks and capacity building that is required would require support not only in terms of training, but also financial support to implement this. The third and the fourth challenges are something that we might have to live with, because in most of the cases, since FSPs are not directly providing directly dealing with the kind of activities that the loans are getting used for. There is a limitation that we are relying on self-reported data in cases of survey indicators, and there will always be limitation with respect to that. And the fourth challenge being the attribution of whether the impact that we are seeing is actually coming from our initiative is something that is hard to address. So a key takeaway from this is that we can address the first two challenge. We will have to uh, we can do it by building the capacity and enabling all those changes that are required at an operational level for the FSP partners. And one way we can do is that with all the fund, we can have some percentage of that fund devoted to just capacity building and the implementation of carrying out an impact evaluation. With that, I'll go to the next slide. Now that we have seen some of the major outcomes from the study and also have an understanding of the prevailing challenges, I would like to put forth some of the potential next steps, starting with the requirement of having a harmonized framework. Now, this is where impact investors need to play a bigger role, because it is through them the requirement of reporting on a common framework is going to flow to their investing institutions. This has to get supplemented with the strengthening of MIS systems of these reporting institutions for greater recording of data, for greater classification and more accurately and for more granularity. This would not only require capacity building effort, but also require financial support to help them do it. Uh, as another requirement would be to have a ready to use quite intuitive toolkit, which we are, as part of this study, are creating an operational manual which anybody can understand, and they will also understand the way to record this data. So all these three steps are something that are going to take care of enhancing the adoption of the framework. Once this is there, we'll start collecting data and start evaluating data for impact evaluation. And this has to get done on a regular basis to see what kind of results we are seeing across this common framework and across institutions. Now, once the implementation is in place, we'll also have to carry out a frequent review of this framework to keep them relevant and keep on adding and enhancing it further for larger use. With that, I would like to stop and thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.